Hi everybody, welcome to our online lesson in our 1.2 notes, and we're talking today about imperial systems of measurement. So we're looking at imperial units. Up to now we've only been talking about SI units, which are meters, kilometers, centimeters. The imperial system has a different set of units, and we're going to be using our data booklets today. So I'm going to ask you to open up your data booklet, your yellow data pages, and we're going to be using that chart on the first page. I'm going to be referring to it. So let's get going. Okay, the imperial system of measurement is commonly used in the UK as well as the US, and it uses different units. They come from really everyday activities or things that we can compare to in nature. So for example, the foot came from the average size of a person's foot. Here are some of the common units in the imperial system. For length, okay, talking about length here, we've got inches, and inches can be abbreviated with a IN, or sometimes you just see this, these quotation marks. That means inches as well. Okay, feet are abbreviated with a FT, or just one quotation mark there, and that means a foot. Okay, if I see that little symbol. Yard and mile. Mile, be careful with mile. The abbreviation for mile is MI, not M. Remember that M means meter. Your data booklet shows you the conversion factors that we're going to need for this chapter. Okay, so for example, 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. That's one conversion factor. 1 yard is equal to 36 inches or 3 feet. Okay, and let's have a look at our data booklet right now, just so you know what I'm talking about. So I've got my data booklet right here, and this is the imperial system. It's the first column in your unit conversion chart, right? Over here is your SI. We've already talked about that, and today we're going to be just dealing with these ones. A little bit later, next class, we're going to be able to go back and forth between these two systems. So here are some of the conversions that you have. Okay, 1 mile is equal to 1,760 yards. Okay, down here a yard is equal to 3 feet. 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. That one you might already know. Okay, those are the ones we're going to use most often. The ones below are talking about mass. So a ton is equal to 2,000 pounds. A pound is 16 ounces. We're not going to be using the ones that are listed here for mass very often at all. Okay, most of our units that we're dealing with are length units, so the top column. All of the abbreviations, if you see something, for example, you see a question that uses this abbreviation here, okay, you can figure them out right there. So there's the abbreviation for an inch. Okay, so when I see that, your data pages have all this information for you. That tells me, oh, that's 5 inches. All right? Okay, so let's keep that open because we're going to come back to it. And let's do some examples here of some unit conversions. Okay. How many inches are in 7.5 yards? That's our question. This is where that unit analysis is really going to help us out. Remember what unit analysis is. What I want equals what I have, okay, times what I know. And what you know, those are your conversion factors. So let's do this. What I want, okay, well, what do I want? Let's put it below. How many inches? That's what I want. I want to know how many inches are equal to what I have. Okay, what I have is this right here, 7.5 yards. That's what I'm given in my question. And what I know, times what I know. Okay, we need to think about this. We need to have a plan. And our plan is that we're going from yards to inches. So I go to my data booklet and I'm looking for a conversion factor that's going to get me from yards to inches. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a look at that. Okay, there's my conversion factors. So I'm looking on the left because I know I'm talking about imperial units. And well, here's the one that I'm going to use right here. Okay, there's one conversion factor. 1 yard equals 36 inches. So this conversion factor will take me from yards to inches in one step. So that's what I'm going to use. 1 yard equals 36 inches. Okay, so 1 yard equals 36 inches. I'm going to write that down for myself. I'm going to multiply what I have by what I know. I want to cancel out the yards, which means that I'm going to place 1 yard in the bottom of my conversion factor. 36 inches is going to go on the top of my conversion factor so that my yards will cancel. Okay, this also tells me to multiply 7.5 by 36. So I do that, and my answer is going to be 270. What are my units now? Inches. Okay, there's my answer. Great. Let's do another one. In your notes, you're going to notice there at the top, it says use proportional reasoning. I'm going to use unit analysis. I'd like us to stick for now with one method. Okay, so we haven't talked about proportional reasoning. We're going to use unit analysis, which is just that what I want equals what I have times what I know. How many feet are in 40 miles? Okay, what do I want? Feet. What do I have? 40 miles. Remember that MI stands for miles, not meters. Okay, miles. That's what that's talking about. So let's set it up. What do I want? The number of feet. It's equal to what I have, 40 miles, times what do I know? Again, I need a conversion factor. We go to your data booklet. Have a look right now at your yellow data booklet. Do you have a conversion factor between feet and miles? Yes. 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet. You have this conversion factor in your data booklet. So we're going to use that conversion factor right here. I have to think about what I'm going to put on the top and what I'm going to put on the bottom. Remember, I'm trying to cancel out my miles, so I want my 1 mile to go on the bottom, and the other half of this factor, 5,280 feet, is going to go on the top. Okay, my miles are going to cancel. My answer is going to come out in feet. Okay, and it's going to be 211,200, big number, of feet. Okay, there's my answer. Which makes sense because I was in a really big unit. 40 miles is a big distance. Okay, if I want to express that answer in a much smaller unit, I'm going to have a much bigger number. I think that once you've got the hang of unit conversion, you're going to find you can convert between any units. It's really easy. We can follow this, what I want equals what I have times what I know, and it's really quite simple for you to do that. Okay? When we measure things in imperial units, there are a few different instruments that we can use. Imperial rulers are rulers that have inches on them. Some rulers have centimeters and millimeters on one side and inches on the other, and those are great rulers to use. In this class, you do need to have a ruler that has inches on it. So that would be an imperial ruler. Okay, if you find one that has both centimeters and inches, that's even better. Measuring tape can also, very often if you look at a measuring tape, if you have one at home, maybe in your garage or in your tool case, those almost always have feet and inches on them. Okay, very common that our measuring tape is in imperial units. There are also calipers that measure the diameter of something round, and it reports that answer to the nearest thousandth of an inch. So, for example, 1.156 inches. Okay. We're not going to look at calipers, imperial calipers, but we are going to talk about rulers. So how do you read your imperial ruler? It is different than our metric ruler, and there's a total of 4 big divisions between every inch. So let's look at, for example, from 0, actually let's look at from 1 to 2. Okay, so from 1 to 2, there's 1 inch on my ruler. Okay, so that would be an inch, and within each of those inches there are 4 major divisions. Okay, so here would be 1 major division. Okay, 2, so it's the longer lines here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one of those represent 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so each one of these, there's 4 divisions here. So 1 inch divided by 4, each of those are equal to 1/4 of an inch. Okay? So if I were to read right off of a ruler what each one is worth, okay, this first one right here, if I was looking right there, that would be 1 and 1/4 inches. Okay. The next one, then, the one in the middle, that is equal to 2/4 or 1/2 of an inch. So this would be reading 1 1/2 inches. Okay. And then this last one here would be reading 1 3/4 inches. All right. There's a lot of divisions on an imperial ruler. So there's 4 major ones there. So if you're measuring something that lands right on one of those 4 divisions, then we can read the measurement just by simply looking at, knowing that each one is worth 1/4 of an inch, we could figure out the measurement. We can also, another way to measure something, I'm just going to come over here to a nice fresh inch. So here's another inch. Okay, so from 2 to 3 inches, that's also equal to an inch. Each one of these, if we count how many small divisions there are, okay, there are actually a total of 16 small divisions. Okay, so if you counted every single one of these, okay, so each one of these, they're very small. It's sort of hard to see on maybe on your screen, but if you look at your piece of paper, your notes, you can see that there's a total of 16. If I count how many small divisions from the 2 to the big 3, there are 16. So each small division, okay, is worth 1/16 of an inch. Each one is worth 1/16 of an inch. Okay. Another way that we can break down an inch is to look at, so let me come over here for a moment. Okay, there's 16 small divisions, there's 4 big divisions, but you might notice that every second line here is a little bit longer. Okay, so an inch can also be broken down into 8 divisions like that. So each one of these is worth 1/8 of an inch. Okay, 1/8 of an inch. So we can break down our ruler, okay? There's a few different ways to measure something. Let's do some examples here together. Okay, on your next page, I've given you some rulers. Where I've put the red arrow, that's where our measurement has stopped. So let's say we're measuring something and the length of it, okay, would go to exactly there, where that little ruler is. Or where that little arrow is. So let's measure that, okay? The first thing that I see is that I'm past the 1, so I know that I'm at least 1 inch, okay? But I'm not quite as far as the 2, so this is less than 2 inches, and you have more than one way to do this, okay? What you might notice is that this red arrow is exactly halfway between 1 and 2 inches. Okay, so you might immediately just say, hey, that's equal to 1/2 of an inch, and that's correct. Okay, so if you read that as 1 1/2 inches, that is correct. Okay, another way that you could figure that out is, this is the same as this. If I looked and I said, well, instead of looking at this ruler and saying, hey, that measurement's right in the center, I could just count how many small divisions I have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? 8. Okay, so I'm at 1 inch and 8 small divisions. How many divisions are there in total between 1 and 2? Remember, we said there are 16 small divisions. Okay, so I could say that's 8 out of 16. So 1 and 8 over 16. And 8 and 16 will reduce. Okay, if I take 8 and I look and I see I have a common factor here, both 8 and 16 can be divided by 8. So if I reduce that fraction, I get 1 and 1. Okay, 8 divided by 8 is 1. 16 divided by 8 is 2. Okay.